essentially doubled your deal flow, and you
Yeah.
eliminated direct mail, right? So
Yeah.
that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
awesome, because a lot of people have direct mail, that's where I'm getting all my deals. You guys eliminated what a lot of people would consider their main deal source, and you doubled your business.
You're listening to the Just Start Real Estate Podcast. If you're serious about your real estate investing business and need real answers, you are in the right place. And now, your host, Mike Simmons.
All right, guys, thank you for joining me here on Just Start Real Estate. I appreciate you tuning in to the show and checking it out. If it's the first time you have ever listened to the show, if you just stumbled upon us, thank you very, very much for doing so. If you are a loyal listener, then thank you very much for coming back. I appreciate it. I have another great show for you today with some great investors, and I'm psyched to bring it to you. I really am. These guys are phenomenal. I met them a few years ago, and they already had a business that was moving along and progressing, and they joined the seven-figure flipping program, which I've mentioned on this show that I am involved in. We help teach investors how to take their business to the next level. It's not for new investors necessarily, but these guys had a business that was already up and running. So they came in, and I was somebody who kind of worked with them early on to help them take their business to the next level, and boy, have they done that. And they're doing it in a way that is a little unconventional. They're not really fueling their business. The lead generation that they're using is not what most people nowadays are using to get leads, and they are extremely profitable. Their margins are fantastic, and they're going to do like 80 deals this year. So that's a little spoiler alert for what's coming, but I just want you to understand the caliber of people that we're talking to on this show, and even specifically today who we're talking to. So I'm excited to bring these guys in. Their names are Chris and Heather Logan. They're a husband and wife team, and these guys are phenomenal. I'm excited to bring them to you. So without any further ado, let's bring them on and talk to them. All right, Chris and Heather Logan, thanks for being here with me. You guys are the best. I appreciate it, and just welcome to the show. Welcome. Thanks for doing this. First of all, I mean, you guys are busy, and we're going to get into all that, what you're doing, but your time is valuable, and I couldn't be happier to have you here. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, Mike, thanks so much for having us. We're pumped to be on your podcast today. So
good. I'm excited to have you guys. I've known you for a while now. I was involved in some of the early stages of your business, and we'll get into some of that too. But let's just, for the people listening who don't know who you are, let's talk about how you got here. Like, what did you do prior to real estate, and how did you get involved? Why did you get involved? What attracted you to this industry?
Sure. So before Heather and I got involved in real estate, we were working in corporate America, 60, 70-hour week jobs. And I'd always had an interest in real estate. My dad, I found out later on in life that my dad actually flipped a property with my grandfather before I was even born, and thought that was pretty neat. But anyway, so we were working corporate jobs, and we just knew that we wanted more out of life, wanted more freedom, more time.
Yeah.
And so I naturally gravitated towards real estate. So I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. Heather and I were actually dating at the time. And ironically enough, I was over at her place one day checking my email. And then there was an ad that came up on the screen while I was checking it that said, this event is coming to your town in Tampa, right? And so I didn't want to go by myself. So I asked Heather, and she said yes. And we went to that event. It was one of those free events where they have you come in, and the speaker talks at a very high level as far as real estate goes, and how it's a path to wealth for millionaires and billionaires and all that. And it piques your interest, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And at the end of the course, or at the end of the thing, they basically say, if you'd like to take the next step and learn more, you can come to our paid event, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we did. I looked at Heather and I said, you want to do this? She said, yep. So went back to the room, got that, went to the paid event. It was 3 days. They talked more about leveraging debt, the importance of making decisions quickly when it comes to real estate, because good deals are here today and gone tomorrow.
Yep.
After we heard everything from that, they gave us an option, obviously, at the end to take the next step, right?
Yeah.
But
Yep.
before that, they broke down all the different types of real estate deals that you can do, and wholesaling was one they talked about. And they kind of drew out on the whiteboard like how a wholesaling deal worked. And then Heather and I looked at each other and we're like, this is it. This is a no-brainer. So we took the next step, went to an event in Miami for a wholesaling 101 course.
Okay.
And we took the course there and ran with it from there. It actually took about 6 months, I think, to do our first deal.
Yeah, about that. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were off and running, still working your corporate jobs, I take it, at this
Yeah.
point. Okay. Cool. So you did your first deal. How'd that one go? Was it a wholesale deal?
Yep.
Okay. How'd that go?
It was from a bandit sign, good old bandit sign.
All right. Good old bandit signs. A little plug for the bandit sign.
Yeah, when we first started, we didn't have, obviously everybody getting started doesn't have, excessive funds for marketing and to invest. So we tried to do what we could with what we had. And we first started with putting out bandit signs consistently every single week. So our very first deal was from a good old bandit sign.
Nice.
Yep.
How did it go? Did you guys make money?
Yes, we did. So it was kind of funny. We they didn't really talk about, like, in wholesaling, how you need to have a buyer, like how you have to have a buyers list first.
Okay.
So they're just like, go out and get a deal, and then the buyers will come, basically.
Yeah.
So we contracted a deal, an amazing deal in a beautiful neighborhood, one that we probably wouldn't market to right now, just because the houses are like higher end. But needless to say, we came across the unicorn.
Yeah.
We contracted it. And I think we made like $4,000 on our first deal, but we pushed, and it took forever to get it done, but we got it done.
Okay.
I think we had like 2 extensions in place with the seller.
Luckily, at that time, we had some very nice sellers, so they were very understanding. And,
You guys had a nice little intro into the business then, a kind of a nice little deal with good sellers and a nice neighborhood. That's helpful. That's good. So
that was all we really needed, basically, to get evidence that it worked.
Yes.
And we needed to keep going.
So you guys were hooked from that point. Then it's all of a sudden started clicking for you. So okay, so you got the bug at that point. What's next? What do you do next? You got the $4,000 profit off a bandit sign. Now what?
So what was really neat is after we did our first deal and we saw it was possible, right? The next deal came very shortly, like right after that. I would say it probably came 2 to 3 weeks later. It came from another bandit sign deal. And then we did that deal. We learned from different things to do and not to do from the first deal. Actually, the same guy that bought the first one bought the second one.
Okay.
He was our go-to buyer for our entire first year of doing deals, pretty much.
Yeah.
And then what we did from that point is we took those funds and reinvested them into direct mail, because we were reading some things online about direct mail and how we should probably do that. And so we did it, and direct mail was good for us for a while. That's how we got things going and started getting consistency. And we were averaging like maybe a deal every other month, and then it got more consistent to a deal a month, and then kind of went on from there.
It was just really exciting that as we started to do more and more and put more back into the business, that the phone kept ringing more and then more. And you're like, this is amazing, And so it starts slow, but then once you keep reinvesting, it's cool to see, like, you're like, oh my gosh, it's really working and it's growing. And
totally. So let me ask you a question. The bandit signs, who was putting them out? You guys are working 60 hours a week. Were you putting them out?
Every week together. I was the driver.
Okay.
So we would get all of our bandit signs loaded in the back of the car very carefully, so we didn't scratch the car when we were pulling them out at every stop.
Heather's car.
So I would be the driver, and we would have these very specific spots we would put up. So we pull up. I'd be like, okay, it just turned red, go. So he would jump out of his car, fly across the median, stick one in, and then he'd run back in the car and I'd be like, okay, it's green. And then we like right onto the next light.
That's so funny.
And we put them out every single week together.
Rain or shine.
Rain or shine, except, sometimes when it was lightning, we would like attempt it, but we're like, maybe this isn't a good idea.
Only a metal sign.
Only a metal sign.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Right next to probably telephone poles and things,
Yeah, so I think we consistently did that every week for what, 2 years
Yeah,
probably?
2 years.
And then after 2 years of consistently doing it every week, I think it was that long, we outsourced it.
Yeah.
So then we hired a guy, paid him to do it every week, paid him per sign and things like that. Had a tracking program.
Yep.
We're like, after doing it so long, we were totally over the bandit side.
You guys hung in there for a long time, actually. 2 years is a long time.
Probably too long, man.
Yeah, we were like over the late nights and risking our lives. But it worked for the time being.
That's hilarious. So once you guys got your first deal and you're like, okay, we're in, this is us, man. How long did it take you to quit your corporate jobs?
So we had a unique strategy with that in place. While we believe that the business would provide a great lifestyle for us, we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to be like, leave our company and then do it for a little while, try it, and then have to go back for whatever
Right.
reason. And so we just wanted to make a calculated decision
Yep.
with that, especially since we saw a future together. We wanted to make sure we were secure. So,
Yep.
So what we did is we actually, saved up. We worked both for a long time. I would say we both worked both full time, the
Okay.
business and working full time. We
Yeah.
saved up, 6 to 12 months of income in the bank, and then decided to leave.
Yeah.
So I think that was probably about 2 years in. I think that was about it, that I left first
Yep.
in April of the year. And then I think Chris stayed another year or so
Yep.
or whatever. And then he left that following year and a half later. So we really planned for, that was like the end mission, right? The goal was to
Yep.
leave corporate America. How do we do that? What do we need to have in place? Like, what do we need to, do to make that happen by this time? So,
Yeah, that's really good. Actually, that's exactly how I did it. I kind of had a deal with my wife. My wife is great, but she's conservative. She's not like, oh, let's just go all in and bet everything. She's not that way. So I was like, okay, here's the deal. And this was like probably 4.5 years in, something like that. I said, here's the deal. I think I can do this. And honestly, I think my job is in the way. I think if I had more time, this could really take off, because I did it as a side hustle too for a long time. And I said, if I can save and bank a year's worth of salary, worst case scenario, 8 months in, we go, okay, this isn't working, and I have to go back to work, and it gives me 4 months to find something before we run out of funds. What do you think of that? And she's like, you save a year's salary and put it in the bank, and I can see it there. I don't care. It's fine. Let's do it. So I did it. Never looked back. That's how it went too. But I think it's smart. I've never been a big, huge fan of just quit your job, burn the boats, like don't give yourself an option B. I'm like, well, I mean, if you're 22, maybe you can do that.
Yeah.
But, when I did this, when I went all in, I was, how old was I? I don't know, 41 or 2 or something, kids and a mortgage and all that. Like, you can't, like, that's just crazy, right?
Yeah.
So I did it. I was late nights, early mornings, all that stuff. Same thing you guys did, right? Just hustled until I was confident. Like, I sort of had that bird off the ground before I, decided I was good. So I think it's smart, and I think people should be careful, because it's real fun to say, I'm going to go in and quit and tell them I'm going to do my own thing. Like, that's great until you can't pay your mortgage, right? So you got to be a little careful. Totally.
that,
So,
Yeah.
all right. So all right, you guys did it for 2 years before you both quit. And then I know I met you through 7-Figure Flipping. You guys joined that program. So where were we in the timeline of that? Like, after the 2 years, you both quit. How long until I met you? How long was that time?
Let's see. I think that was probably 2 years or 3 years? 2 years.
well, this is our
before?
second year in 7-Figure
Oh, so-
Flipping.
Yeah.
So that what was that, year 3 maybe? Beginning of year 3?
So it have to be at least 2 years, if not a little bit longer, before
Yeah,
we
so
met
that
you.
must have been year 3,
Yeah,
because if we've been in 2, well, no, maybe 2, I don't know, somewhere maybe.
Okay, so
around
I met you like a year or 2 after you quit your jobs.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, that makes sense.
Working out the timeline there.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And then what were you guys doing right before you joined 7-Figure Flipping? What did your business look like? What was your kind of your volume, and how were you doing things?
Yeah. So before we joined 7-Figure Flipping, our business looked totally different. It was basically Heather and I, right? And we were doing, I want to say, I don't know, like a couple of deals a month.
Okay.
Our business model was a little bit different back then. We would have, we'd focus on marketing to properties that had really large spreads, right? So we had a low volume but high margin type business.
Mhm.
And we had a few different types of marketing strategies we were doing at the time, still wholesaling, but we would close on more stuff. We listed on the MLS. We even took on some rehabs. And, we were living a good life with what we were making from that business and enjoying it. But the problem was Heather and I were tired of working in the business.
Yeah.
And we wanted to take our business to that next level. And next level, I define as having people in the positions, team members that you can rely on, that are bought into the vision, believe in what you're doing, and want to move towards a common goal, in which allows us to be taken out of the business so we can focus on expansion and the bigger things, right?
Okay.
So that was really our goal when we joined Seven Figure Flipping, and we looked at a lot of different masterminds out there to see which would be the best. But I loved how it was just a focused group.
Yeah, that I think it was like at the end of that year, we were reflecting, like, after New Year's, about how we wanted that new year to be different, right? Personally, professionally, and things like that. And Chris and I thought we were under the mindset that we're gonna hit that mark with just he and I, right? We're gonna no one can work harder, right? You have that mentality. No one knows your business better than you.
Yeah.
And we thought we're gonna hit that that goal and that mark with just he and I. We're gonna grind it out and we're gonna do it.
Yeah.
And then at the end of that year, we were so exhausted, and we were reflecting, after New Year's, about how we wanted it to be different. And, we really decided we were going to seek out mentorship and coaching. And like Chris said, boy, did we go looking, and we looked, we sought out quite a few. We heard, like, some of them we attended, some of them we had like a phone meeting with. We really took our time to make sure that it felt right. Like after the call or the intro, we kind of talked about it, and it really just wasn't what we were looking for. Like, we knew what we wanted and we knew what we were looking for. So we kept kind of seeking them out here and there. And we're like, we're not going to rush into it. We're going to make sure that it really feels like it's the right fit.
Right.
And then we came across, I guess that the page online somewhere, I can't even remember online where. And we sat down at the table, and he's like, look at this. And we were kind of looking at it, reading over it, and it appealed to us.
Yeah.
So then we looked into that next step, which I guess was getting on a call or.
Yeah. And you guys had a ridiculous amount of testimonials that we listened to. And so I'm like, man, like, if one of these 3,000 testimonials is right. I mean,
right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we decided to submit our info to get on a call or something like that. I can't remember. And then I don't even remember who we spoke to first initially.
Yeah, I think it was Eddie we spoke to.
I can't remember.
Okay.
Yeah,
but yeah, and then after that call, we got set up with you, which I think you are the perfect person for us to have to analyze our business and to kind of say, hey, look, here's where you are. Where do you want to go? And then, giving us input and advice on how to get there. Some of the strategies that you recommended for marketing, I mean, we use today with looking at our different lists and how we pull on list source, and a lot of stuff really, really helped it as far as the pieces and everything. I mean, it was tremendous help. So
cool.
Yeah. And I would say a big thing is, like when we had once we joined the group, the first intro call that was with you, that was a lot of, I guess, that aha moments where you were like, really broke it down. Like, we were way overthinking, right?
Way overthinking.
Our complex corporate minds always think that it's got to be the most
it's
difficult.
Gotta be harder.
It's got to be harder. Yeah. We have to make sure every single thing has meaning and this and that. And it was just kind of like that moment where we got off the call with you, and we were like, holy cow, like, we were way overthinking everything. We were analyzing way too much, and it was getting us to a point, right? But it was just that turning point where finally someone said, hey, like, worry about this, don't worry about that, and just do these things. And we were like, are you sure it's kind of that simple? Like,
yeah.
And we were like, okay, we're just going to trust him. Obviously he's got a successful business and things like that. So we were like, this is why we joined a mastermind like this, to trust the advice we got and run with it. And boy, did we ever. And that's when it really changed everything for us.
Absolutely.
You guys are so cool. And I've talked to a lot of people who are new in the business, or not, you guys weren't that new, but people who are trying to grow, like they wanted to go somewhere. And there's really two types of people when you boil it down. People who will listen and take the advice that they were seeking, and people who will go, well, yeah, but the way I look at it is, and it's like, in one side ends up usually good things happen, and the other side they stay status quo, right? So you guys were very open and like open to like learning and seeing it a different way, and that's not always easy to do when you're highly intelligent, you're corporate trained, and you're looking for a more complex answer to a simple question. And not most, but some people will go, well, that sounds a little, you're oversimplifying it. There's more to it, right? And you guys did that a little bit, but like you said, you were kind of like, okay, this is what we were looking for. We need to trust that this person knows what he's talking about. And you're doing it. And you guys shared something today at our private Facebook group for Seven Figure Flipping. You just shared just today, like I saw it, that you are basically at this point, you have finally completely automated, systematized. You hired the right people who are doing their job without your direct input all the time, and you're able to rise above the day-to-day for the most part and just manage your business and free yourself up of some of the minutia that you have to be involved in when you're trying to get to that point. So I said it on Facebook, but I'll say it here publicly. Congratulations. You guys are great. Hiring and bringing people in and trusting and training, it's hard. It's not easy, but there's a way to do it well, and there's some good best practices. And you guys went through a few people, but you got to the point where you have like acquisitions nailed down. You have dispositions nailed down. You guys have a process for lead generation, which we'll touch on in a minute, but you got it kind of all buttoned up. And listen, it's a business. There will be things that will happen. There'll be challenges. You know that. I don't have to tell you that. But you got to the point now where you finally have gotten that time back a little bit, the freedom, and you've systemized and you've created a business, not a job for yourself, right? Yeah. So congratulations. It can be done. It's a real thing out there for those of you who are listening going, but I'm running around doing everything. Yeah, that's how it starts, and then you have to put together a plan and execute, and you guys did that. So
just to speak on that real quick. So for anyone out there that is thinking, oh, now's not the right time to hire in my business, like take that barrier and just throw it in the trash can, right? Because thing is we said the same thing for a long time until we finally were like, listen, we can't do this anymore. Just the two of us, we have to do something, right?
Yeah.
And we did it, and we look back on what it took to do it, and we could have done it like a year ago, 2 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the biggest barrier, I think, is shifting your business from a high paid hobby, right, to an actual business, but thinking that you have to be at a certain point before you can hire people. No, you're hiring these people so they can get you there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So,
what was your biggest mental hurdle to get over when it came to hiring? Just out of curiosity, because you said you should have done it earlier, you thought you couldn't, whatever. What was the biggest hurdle or misconception that you had?
There was several, right? So the first was deal volume. You're like, you're never doing enough deals to get that person in that seat, right?
Yeah.
Because let's say 1 month you crush it and you do a lot of deals, and you're like, yeah, we're ready. And then the next month, maybe the deals dip a little bit, and you're like, oh shoot, maybe I'm not that ready, right?
Yeah.
And so you go through this cycle. At least that's what we did for a couple of years, and then you're like, you know what? Forget it. We're just going to do it, and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
And things I can't explain it, but like things just kind of happen. They work themselves out. You do more deals, like you get. As long as you're focused on the process and you're dedicated to making it work for them and making it work for your company, like you find the way. Like it happens.
Well, it's a little bit chicken and egg too, because when you bring people in, it allows you to do more, right? You can do more. Like it expands your fishbowl, so to speak. Like you can grow to a point in that bowl, but until you expand the fishbowl, and part of that is bringing people in. Okay, so not doing enough deals was one. Anything else that comes to mind that was a tough hurdle?
I would definitely say, like, for us, it was finding the right person.
Yeah.
Like, because, a big hurdle we had to get over, I think we heard it in this group or whatever, that if you can find someone to do the job at least 70% as good as you can, right? Or more, obviously the goal is to get someone 70% or better. But if you can find somebody to do at least 70% as good as you, that's a good thing, right? Yeah. And Chris and I we were so used to doing everything and knowing everything and owning everything that we were like, how are we going to find this person that we can trust enough to come in and take over either of our spots? Yeah. That they're like, we're like, no one can do it as good as us, right? No one can close as good as us. No one can, do marketing as good as us. Yep. And we had to really get over that hurdle to say that if we can find somebody to do it like this, we're going to train, and literally we've poured everything we have into giving them all the knowledge, that we have. And I think that was a huge thing was,
and reading traction too, kind of started to open us up to this before we joined Seven Figure Flipping too. Separating ourselves into individual roles within the business, basically identifying, what's Heather's strengths, right? What is she amazing at, right? I'm not so good at, and what are things that I'm really good at or amazing at, and that she's not so good at, right? Or that are not really her strengths. So it's finding that and drilling down, not just focusing on your weaknesses and what you have to improve, but identifying what each individual person's strength. We worked as one person in the business for a long time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I would always sell the deals, but sometimes like she do acquisitions, I do acquisitions. I mean, we were
division of responsibility.
2 people's time.
Yep.
So.
And then once we actually sat down and broke apart the roles and responsibilities, that was a huge game changer too. Like when we were like, okay,
she was actually a lot better at acquisitions. I mean, I thought I was good, and she comes over here and just crushes it. And I'm like, hey, maybe we should have done this a lot sooner. You know?
I would sell my house to her before I would sell it to you too, Chris.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Sorry, just the facts, man.
Yeah, but that was pretty cool though. We did that was a huge eye opener. Once I owned a certain point, he owned a certain point. We were like, wow, like we're both really flourishing at what we're both crushing it. So that was pretty cool to see.
But I'd sell my house to Heather before I'd sell it to you.
As long as we all agree.
I give you a hard time, but we agree.
I will say that the coolest thing though, just to talk about closing deals. So obviously like we were doing flashback, we were doing everything in person, meeting with sellers in person and things like that. But a huge transition we've also done this year is slowly transition to closing everything over the phone. So right now we're at about a 90%.
Wow.
At the beginning of the year, we were kind of 50-50 because we were still getting the processes buttoned up, the scripts, the deals, the confidence that this is how it's going to be, So now what's really neat is we've actually transitioned to we're doing about 90%, if not more.
Okay, I didn't even know that actually. So real quick, I want to go back. You referenced a book, and just because I don't know if everyone caught it, it's Traction. It's called Traction.
Yeah.
Gino Wickman, right? Is that Gino Wickman wrote that book, right?
Gino Wickman.
Yeah, Traction by Gino Wickman. So you guys can look that up. Okay, good. So you brought up closing on the phone. So that's interesting. You guys are both, like you said, Chris, in all seriousness, you're a good closer in person. Heather's a good closer. Why go over the phone when you know the power of being in front of somebody? What made you choose to start doing it over the phone? That's number one. And then next question I want to ask after you answer that is, what is the pushback, if any, that you get from sellers? What is the biggest hurdle with doing it over the phone?
Yeah, I would say that for us, we decided to do more so closing over the phone because it was doing more with your time, right? So being more efficient, when I'm closing somebody over the phone and then I'm saying, okay, I have to drive 30, 45 minutes to their house, spend 45 minutes to an hour at that appointment, and then drive that time back to the office. That's like 3 hours out of your afternoon. And you're like, man, my afternoon is gone. Now I got to get caught up on all these other things. So we just wanted to be able to do more, get out more offers, more contracts, more conversions. Now when we lock something up over the phone, we have property inspectors in all of our counties and markets that we say, hey, we've locked this deal up over the phone. We need you to go by on this day for property photos. So we send them by to do the inspection, take the pictures, put a lockbox on the property. And it was just doing more because once we scaled out the cold calling team, we had so many leads coming in every single day that couldn't sit, that had to be handled. And so the only way to do that was to be more efficient with our time. So I was like, we're great at closing in person. For me, it's a little bit of a transition from going to closing in person over the phone, just because I love being in front of people just due to read. I love that close, right?
Yeah.
Reading their body language, being able to build rapport, walking through their home, create being empathetic and really being relatable, because most people do business with who they trust, and that trust is really built when you're in person.
Yeah.
So we just took that same model and really just transitioned it to the phone, right? We really strive to create that same conversation with empathy and relatability and all those things that we did in person, and now we're just doing it over the phone. So
all right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Kind of removing a barrier there too. If you can close in person, then you can do it over the phone. If you can do it over the phone, you can do it in person. And I think that it also lifts the cap off of the area you can serve as well, right?
Yep.
Yep.
So we're in one virtual market right now, about to expand to a second virtual market. What's really interesting is we're not having to hire a new acquisitions person for that market. Our existing acquisitions manager in our home market can handle the deals in those markets too.
Yep.
It's just setting up relationships, systems, and processes, and then generating the buyers, and then it's no different from your own market. So it actually takes the cap off of how much more you can do as a business as well.
Did you find any hurdles when you try to do it over the phone? Like, is there any weird, like, I would anticipate, because we don't close over the phone, I would anticipate people saying, like, who are you? Like, how do I know you're real? Or just in general, sometimes we find people on the phone can be real defensive and standoffish. And then you get in person, they melt, because it's a real person. Like, what if any? Maybe none. Maybe I am putting a hurdle that doesn't even exist. But what hurdles or what challenges did you find when you're doing this over the phone that you didn't have to deal with when you were in person?
So I would definitely say that you get those sellers on the phone, right, that have those barriers up. Not all of them, every call goes different.
Sure.
But the sellers that tend to have those barriers or those walls up, you really have to learn to be a very intentional listener, right? And also with your negotiating style. Another great book is Never Split the Difference.
Yep.
By Chris Voss. That's game changing too. So you really, as being in acquisitions, you have to know what type of person you have on the phone, right? By their tone, by how fast they talk, by their body, not by their body language, but by like the tone of
You
their
can kind
voice.
of hear their body language. Though,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Like if you got Susie Smith, who's 92 on the phone, or you got Johnny Rocket, who's a New Yorker, like, Pitbull, like you really have to chameleon yourself to who you are with on the phone. Like that's a huge thing.
Yep.
And a lot of people, like when we get those people on the phone where they're like, how do I know this is a scam? How do I know you're even real? Mr. Seller, if I was you, I would have those same concerns. So, and then we kind of talk a little bit more instead of trying to go in for that kill or going for that close. We're more so like kind of addressing that without directly addressing it, talking them a little bit more, telling them a little bit more, building that rapport, getting them to laugh. And they're like, oh, okay. Yeah. So tell me a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then kind of just, you can't go in and be like, it's a skill. You can't go in and be like, these solicitation callers, right? That call you, that want to sell you X, Y, and Z. Like they call you, they don't care to ask you any questions about you or yourself. They're just like, hey, this is so-and-so and I'm selling this today and I want you to buy it. Yeah. And what is your response? You're like, who's this joker? And like, why is he calling me? And I got to go
Exactly.
Yeah. But when you call in, and you got to remember, it's a people business, right? So I think that's the big thing that we always have to remember. Like we're in the people business of building that rapport with other people, and our business, one of our core values is having a servant mentality. So when we're on the phone with these people, like how can we best serve them? How can we best assist them? And a lot of times what I actually love is when I get those people on the phone that have those barriers really high and those walls up. And I learn kind of like by the questions that I ask how to break those down. And it's just so awesome by the end of the call when you can see that you've broken through and they're like open to talking with you and open to this and open to those next steps. I love that challenge of just being like, okay, I got a difficult one. Not, it's no problem because we're going to
see you're different.
Yeah.
And people can sense your motives too. That's a big thing. So when we, get on the phone with people, the difference between us is like people can see that we really care and they're not just a number and we're not just, So,
that does make sense. No, I'm glad that you guys explained that a little bit more because I think there's a lot of folks out there that would say, oh, you can't close over the phone, right? But you guys are doing it, and it's just a matter of taking the time. You can't be on or off the phone in 5 minutes would be my guess. You have to spend a little bit of time and make them understand that you're a real person who's listening to what they have to say and you care about what their situation. That's totally cool. And I know you guys do you do a lot of cold calling. So is it I'm assuming, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm assuming the cold calling team are not closing, that you're setting appointments for an acquisition to call back and do that. Okay. Yeah. That's kind of what I thought. And you said you send an inspector out to the property. Do they do a full-on inspection or like kind of a walkthrough inspection? I know they're taking pictures, but how much of an inspection are you doing on these properties?
So sometimes full inspections,
Varies by property.
but like sometimes we'll actually have a licensed inspector go out to the properties, right?
Okay.
And then other times we'll send members of our team, which they're realtors, right? Most of the time. And then we basically pay them like $50 to go out to the property, take pictures, and then they upload pictures to our company Dropbox account. They send those to our company and upload them into our CRM, and then that's it. And our acquisition has it.
That's so cool. Do you send like a DocuSign or something to the seller? Is that how you get their signature?
Yep, everything's done via DocuSign for the most part. Usually it's all DocuSign. Occasionally it might be fax, but that's like maybe the smallest percent.
Yeah.
And then the ones that
people have fax machines anymore. People have fax.
Believe it or not.
Yeah, what types of sellers those are. Yeah. And then that 5 to 10% that we go out to, everybody knows what that seller looks like. The 92-year-old lady that that hasn't turned on a computer, no smartphone, no library, doesn't even know what a fax is. So
right.
But I will say that like something like not so with closing over the phone, right? Like you hope that every call goes great, right? But occasionally, like not every call goes perfect. So you have to accept that too, right? Like just like when you're in home with somebody, everything's not always 100%. So you do get sometimes those people that are a little bit more, but on to the next one, right?
Yeah.
So don't get hung up with, oh, this guy was rude or mean or upset or hung up on me.
Yeah.
You're just like, well, sorry for him. I'm not buying his house today. And then just, kind of keep that mentality that it's a numbers game.
Yep, totally. I totally agree with that. So you guys are doing some virtual stuff. That's cool. I didn't know you were doing that either. You guys are just rockers. I mean, you guys are just taking off. So the virtual markets, what made you expand? Was just more reach? Like just you kind of felt like you had nailed down your market and you need to go somewhere else, or what was it? What was the attraction to going virtual?
So, it's actually a couple of reasons. The first reason is that, we switched from doing direct mail to cold calling at the end of last year.
Yep.
So at the end of last year, we saw what our cost per piece was of direct mail and our cost per deal. And then at that point, we saw what we were doing with cold calling. We had 2 people on our team last year doing it. And our cost per deal was just like night and day with cold calling than it was direct mail.
Yep.
And so we made the decision to go, 100% cold calling. And so with that, there's only so many lists you can pull in your own market. There's only so many times you can hit them before you have to rest those lists and call in another list, right?
Yeah.
And so our motivation to expand to another market was we hit our lists really hard.
Yeah.
And 6 months into the year, we're like, well, shoot, man, we gotta pull some more lists,
Yeah.
So basically, we pulled more lists, and we did just kind of an analysis of the surrounding markets that we have, and just other markets that we had talked about wanting to go into, and we ended up expanding to these a lot sooner than we thought, just by pulling a list.
Okay. So are they like adjacent markets, or are they like cross the country kind of markets?
These are adjacent markets, but they're too far for us to actually physically go to for appointments. Some are 2 hours away, 3 hours away. So it's just not feasible for that.
Okay.
So basically it's just about, setting up the boots on the ground in the market. Right. Yep. And then basically just have our team call in the leads like they would, leads in our home market.
Yep.
And then our acquisitions team work those leads and get those deals done.
How do you evaluate these properties if you're not in that market? What's your method for coming up with an offer in a new market? Like, how do you evaluate that?
So I'll let Heather answer that question because she's in.
Do you want to talk about the MLS analysis that we do?
Oh yeah. Sure.
Well, you don't have to break it down. My point is, like, if you go to a new market, like right now in my market, I have MLS access. But if I went to, like, I'm in Michigan, if I went to Indiana, like, I don't have the MLS. And I know the MLS is reliable, right? How do you guys get your data to evaluate properties?
So we haven't ran across that problem just yet, but I can tell you what I would do if we were in that situation. So our MLS extends to the areas that we're.
Oh, okay. That's huge. Okay.
But we have, let's see, at the beginning of this year, was the middle of last year, we actually did a wholesale in a virtual market where our MLS didn't extend.
Okay.
And so what we did is we actually called a friend of mine that actually lives in the market. He's a realtor.
Oh,
and I asked him to hire me on as an assistant, basically, quote unquote, give him access. And he gave us access to his MLS. So that's really what I would do. If I was going to be in that situation and I was licensed, I would basically tell the agent, hey, I'm going to send you so many referrals. It's just going to be ridiculous. Your business is going to explode. And in exchange, if you could just give me, MLS access,
Yep.
and you can arrange some type of percentage of the commission if you're licensed. And if you're not licensed, you can send referrals in exchange for the MLS access.
Oh, nice. That's a good idea, actually. That's a really good idea. Yeah, people ask me all the time, and I always tell them, like, they'll go, what about Zillow? What about Redfin? You can use all those things, but I'm just telling you, like, it's tough love, but the MLS is going to give you your best data. So if you know there's something out there that is like the Bible of the data that you want, why would you go with something secondary? Just create a relationship, figure it out, be creative, right? Offer to exchange leads for access, whatever you have to do, but just do it. Like, don't make that a hurdle. Just get it, right? And move forward. That's awesome. So you guys mentioned cold calling. You're somewhat of a celebrity in the circles that we all run in with your cold calling, because you guys have figured something out that has frustrated people for a long time. You're not the first person to think about cold calling as an option for lead gen, but you are doing it better than anybody I know. And people get frustrated because cold callers can get burned out and people don't know how to manage all that. So without going deeply into it, because we could be here for another 2 hours, what made you decide to go straight cold calling? How long did it take you to get that dialed in? And what is your plans for that? Is there any plan to improve it?
Yeah, great question. So, so just for the record, cold calling frustrated us too. We were doing it. So we're not it's not like that didn't happen with us. But it just comes down to how bad you want something, how bad you want to figure something out.
Yep.
And I get kind of obsessive with that sometimes, and so do we. So anyway, to go back to what you were saying. So the reason we decided to cold call, so we were having direct mail was no longer working for us as well as it had in the years prior, right? The market was heating up. A lot more people are getting postcards. You walk into a house sometimes when we were going on appointments and their stacks literally like this.
Yeah.
And we're like, why'd you pick us? Well, we just took yours off the top type of deal, right?
Yeah.
So cold calling was how I generated leads for every sales company that I've been a part of. Same with Heather. We both have a lot of experience calling over the phone in high volume environments. And so at the end of the year, we're like, shoot, this is something we're struggling with. I mean, why not lean into our strengths? Like, what are we really good at that we can double down on and just own, right?
Yeah.
And so we're like, well, I mean, we're good at making calls and reaching out to people. So we said, you know what? Let's do it. Let's test it. So I started making calls, right? And this was before the end of last year.
Yeah.
Towards the beginning of last year, I was making some calls to
when we were doing the transition.
Yeah, exactly.
Still doing direct mail, but starting to figure out cold calling.
Yeah. So I was calling on some bird dog leads. I created a system to be able to scale that. And so I was calling on those, and I was noticing that the deals in the leads that I was calling on, there wasn't a ton of competition for those particular deals or leads. And our margins were just a lot bigger than some of our other deals we were getting from other channels of marketing. And it just made more sense. So I did it for probably, I want to say 3 to 6 months of cold calling myself. And when we got the deal volume consistent with cold calling at one deal a month, at that point, we were like, you know what? Let's hire someone to replace me. So we hired 3 people, 3 assistants. And then one person quit shortly after. And so we were left with 2. Those same 2 guys stuck with us for the rest of the year. And then we were at that point of saying, being frustrated with direct mail, we said, okay, let's put everything on a spreadsheet and take a look at what our return on investment was, because that's what marketing is. It's an investment, right?
Yep.
And so we saw that cold calling was just destroying it. I mean, that was 7 to 1, $7 gross for every dollar spent. I think it was $7 gross and per dollar spent, and $6 net, or it was $8 gross and $7 net. I can't remember. Anyway, it was crazy. And our direct mail return, I want to say it was 4 to 1 or 3 to 1. Yeah. So it was 4 to 1 gross, 3 to 1 net. And at the end of the day, when you have other business expenses, like people you're hiring to answer the calls and stuff like that, the return didn't make sense for us.
Yeah.
For at least the way we were doing direct mail. So that was when we decided to go on with cold calling. January 1st hit, we hired 10 cold callers, right? So we added 8 to our team, right there.
Wow.
So we weren't playing around. We were we're all into this thing.
Yeah.
So we hired 8 more cold callers to bring our team to a total of 10. We outsourced to a call center in the Philippines and totally bombed for the month of January. Not one deal in the month of January. And so we fired everybody except for the original 2 people that we had.
Yeah.
Well, we even fired one of our original guys, kept our best guy.
Okay.
And then we went and individually sought out places you could hire people that would do outbound calling from different sites. And we rehired the entire team in the month of February. And the end of February, we were building our deal pipeline. And in the beginning of March, we had 22 or 25 deals under contract, all from cold calling.
Wow.
Actually, one was from yellow letters from the previous year, and one was a referral from January. But the rest were from cold calling.
Wow. And then you guys were completely sold at that point, I would think.
Yeah, we're like, man, this is ridiculous. And this is like the best month we ever had in our business. So we're like, that's it. We're all in, you know?
That's awesome. So, okay. So what does your team look like now? How many people do you have and that kind of thing?
Yeah. So great question. So we took our original top performer cold caller and we turned him into our team lead. So he now manages the team.
Okay.
So we have a total team of 6 right now, 5 people on the team plus him, 6. He dials as well. But we give him some more hours so he can manage the rest of the team. You know, I've trained him on one-on-ones. So he has one-on-ones 1 day of the week with each member of our team. He has weekly script training 3 days a week with the team. And I've taught him how to run all that stuff. And now he oversees everything.
Okay.
And that's pretty much how the cold calling team works.
And they're all virtual, right? They're VAs. They're from overseas, I assume?
Yeah.
Okay.
All
out of the country.
We actually had an American do cold calling for us. And what I found, unfortunately, is Americans want more money, which is fine. I don't mind paying if I'm going to get the return. But the work ethic, at least from some of the people that we had, just wasn't there.
Yeah.
Right. So these guys, you know, in the places that we'll hire them, I mean, their work ethic is like crazy. They'll get on the phone like, super pumped to be dialing today. This is crazy. We're going to get them leads. Let's go, guys. You
That's
know?
great.
And I'm like, man, I love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, where do you see it going in terms of like the team that you have? Do you want to have a team of 50? Are you happy with the 6? Is that pretty much where you want to be, or do you want to grow it, or the cold calling part of it? Is that something you want to continue to grow, or have you found like your equilibrium?
No, I mean, absolutely. So one of the things we learned from going from a team of 10 to a team of 6 is we learned that sometimes more isn't always better.
Mm-hmm.
And so you want to keep track of each, just like you track, like, okay, you're going to send out a direct mail piece to a list. What's your ROI on that individual list?
Mm-hmm.
You want to track your ROI and your individual team members.
Yeah.
Right. And see who's bringing in the deals, who's not. So you have a little bit more leeway because the dollar amount you're paying these guys isn't like, you know, what you're spending on direct mail. Right. But you want to track that ROI. So not just saying I'm going to have 50 people on my team, but I'm going to track the ROI of each group. So we're going to be hiring in groups of 10, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And one team lead is going to oversee a group of 10. So right now we're at 6. So we'll have 4 more to hire once we expand into a few more markets. And then our second group of 10, we've already identified who our team leader is for that on our team.
Nice.
And then he's going to oversee that second group of 10.
Love it. God, that's so cool. And the margins are great. We've gone over this in the past, and I kind of saw your metrics. What are you guys using as your dialer? And I guess do you have? I don't know if you have this information in your head, but like how many calls are these people making per day?
Yeah, so great question. So we use a dialer called ZenCall.
Okay.
And if anybody that's listening right now is interested in getting ZenCall, reach out to me. I have a special discount that you can get that saves a significant amount from the per seat cost that you would typically hire.
Nice. Let's just say it now. We'll say it at the end. But how do they get a hold of you? Like what's the mode that you prefer?
You can either reach out to me through Facebook, through a private message.
Okay.
That's fine. Or you can send an email to Chris, so CHRIS @riserealestategroup.com, and you spell it just like it sounds, RISE, realestategroup.com.
Okay.
Altogether. Okay,
good. All right. So, okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. You use ZenCall as your dialer?
Yeah, so we use ZenCall. ZenCall is true call center software. And as far as how many calls they make, we've made as many calls as 500,000 calls in a month.
Wow.
Before. But I would say on average, as far as connects goes, when they're making calls and connecting with people, each rep is probably dialing on about 5,000 numbers a week.
Okay, each person is doing 5,000 dials per week. And I assume with Zen Call, it's multiple calls at one time. Like they're setting a bunch of calls, somebody picks up, the other ones drop, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it can vary too. So if we've hit a list a bunch of times, then the Zen Call dialer can speed up to as fast as 25 lines dialing all at the same time.
Wow.
And so that's where we got up to that 500,000, is we were calling on a lot of lists that we had going for a long time. It was taking a lot more phone calls to reach people than normally a fresh list would. So we sped up the dialer, and we just made an obscene amount of calls.
Yeah. How do you guys deal with the do not call sitch? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. So with do not calls, we have an internal do not call list that we scrub against.
Okay.
It's really important, and I'd advise anybody looking to get into cold calling to check with the rules and laws of your state. We're not attorneys.
Yeah,
all that good
for
information.
Sure. Yep, definitely.
So, but out of all seriousness, though, when you're reaching out to people, if you're respectful to those people, and you're instructing your team to be respectful to those people, you shouldn't run into any problems. The problems that people face is when a seller is rude and then you respond in kind.
Yeah.
That is opening yourself up for big problems, whether you're calling on someone that's on the do not call list or you're not calling on someone that's there.
Yeah.
The same thing can happen with direct mail. If you send harassing pieces in the mail, what do you think's going to happen? Or if your team, answers the phone and they're rude to the person, you're going to get complaints one way or the other. So
totally.
Marketing is the same as far as that goes.
Yep, I totally agree. I think a lot of it has to do with how you, and for that matter, ringless voicemail, we do that kind of stuff a lot. It really does matter what kind of a message are you leaving? Is it aggressive? Is it, is it agitating? And those are the things that will get you in trouble. So, all right, good. I want to kind of wrap up a little bit here, but before we do, a couple questions. Number one, we heard about your beginnings and that bandit sign deal you did, made $4,000. You kind of ramped up. You were doing a few deals. What does your business look like today? Where are you currently sitting with your business?
So currently sitting with our business as far as a team layout, and then as far as performance, we'll get into that.
Okay.
So team. So if you read the book Traction, I'm the visionary. Heather's the integrator. They both work together to form that ultimate vision of where the company is going to go, but also laying the foundation of how things are going to get there. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, we have one acquisitions manager. We actually just hired a dispositions manager. So he's in place now. Pumped about him, just like we are acquisitions manager. And we have a team of 6 cold callers. One of them is a team lead. And that's pretty much our entire team. And then we have some realtor partners and property inspectors and all that. But I mean, that's our core team.
Nice.
As far as volume goes, we're on pace for 80 deals at the end of this year. So wow. That's really exciting. That's a huge jump from where we were.
That's awesome. That is so cool. So real quick question, just kind of maybe a nerdy question. With your team, who handles the transaction part of it? When it has to go through that closing, is your dispo guy doing that, or who deals with title?
So right now, acquisitions is also acting as transaction coordinator.
Okay.
So,
okay.
That was kind of he's doing both of those, and then our next hire, after we got these people 100% up and going, we're going to hire a transaction coordinator.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense. And we kind of do a similar thing. Only we have our dispo guy. He's the transaction manager, basically. He's interacting and making sure it's all going through. So that's smart. That makes total sense. So, okay, so that's where your team is. You're at 80 deals, on pace to do 80 deals this year, which is, what'd you do last year, by the way? How many deals did you do last year?
Last year, I want to say we probably did, 40, maybe? 40,
okay.
5, somewhere around there, maybe.
I don't remember.
So you essentially doubled your deal flow, and you eliminated direct mail, right? So that's amazing. That's awesome, because a lot of people direct mail, that's where I'm getting all my deals. You guys eliminated what a lot of people would consider their main deal source, and you doubled your business, and your margins are better, right? So, and now you're completely automated and hired out. That's so cool. So if you guys were going to start over like today, like you're still those people in corporate working 60 hours a week, I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. You're still working 60 hours a week. You know what you know now. How would you start your business? What would be the first thing you would do? Like, how would you start building this thing that you have now?
So I'd like to get a unique perspective from my side, and then I'd also like to get Heather's perspective.
Great. Perfect.
So that we can kind of hear two sides of the business. So do you want to go first? Or do you want me to go first?
No, you go first.
Okay.
I'm just kind of thinking, actually.
So, and if what I say is on board with what you would do, then that's fine too. So,
probably will be.
so basically, if I was going to start over, first of all, I would remove all limiting beliefs as far as you have to be at a certain point before you do X, Y, and Z. That's a big thing. And X, Y, Z could be expand your marketing. It could be, hire a person on your team. It could be whatever that is, whatever that looks like, whatever barrier or block that's in front of you. I would just like remove that, because it's truly, it doesn't exist. It's not real. Right.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing that I would do. And that would open up a world of possibilities. But the second thing that I would do is I would stop overcomplicating it, stop overthinking it. If it's direct mail, like just send a piece. Don't worry about so much what it says. Just get a piece from something that works and send it out, right? And tweak as you go, right?
Yeah.
But marketing strategy, I would probably cold call. I would probably get on the phone. I would pull a list. I would call people and see if they want to sell their properties. And then I would scale it a lot faster than we did, for sure.
If somebody was going to start cold calling, they're like, okay, I'm doing some deals. This cold calling thing is awesome. Look, I'm going to look into this. Would you tell them, and I don't want to lead you, tell me no if this is not true, but would you tell them just take whatever list you're mailing and skip trace it and just call that list to start?
Exactly.
100%.
Yeah, because that's a barrier. I mean, one of the top questions I get from people is, what's the best list, man? What's your best performing list?
Right.
Give me that list. Like, what should I call? And it's like, dude, just call. Take the list that you're already mailing to, or you're already doing some other type of marketing to, skip trace it, call it. That's it. And that will remove so many barriers. And if you just do that, you can experiment with other lists later, just like you do with direct mail. But if you're just getting started like in mailing, and then you're like, what list should I mail? And people are like, here's 15 different options for you. You're like, oh my God, like where do I begin?
Yeah. And market to market, there is no best list. Like every market, the list is going to perform differently, probably. So
yeah, and that's a thing. And one last thing that I would do also is I'd pick one marketing channel and I would own that channel, right? Own it, know it better than anybody, and then once you got that, then scale to a second marketing channel, because it may take you a little bit more time in the beginning, but you're going to scale a lot faster. When you do that, you get much better return on your marketing. But what was your suggestion?
I was going to say, I think something that we kind of talk about when we reflect back a lot is like just thinking bigger.
Yeah.
Right. Like much bigger. Like if you're like, oh, I'm going to put out, X number of signs a week, and I'm just going to, no. You need a double, triple, quadruple. Like we talk about that a lot. Like we've always like done big things, but in the beginning we were like, man, we just had that. We should have thought bigger. And
like we it's so funny. Like in the moment you're like, man, I'm thinking big, bro. We're going to do like 100 signs,
Yeah,
and it's like,
I know.
And it's not.
Or you're like, I'm going to mail out, X number of pieces. And then you reflect on how it's like to go from that number to like 30,000 a month.
Because you have no point of reference,
Yeah.
unless you're looking at what numbers other people are doing, you really have no point of reference with what's big, right?
Yeah, totally.
And so I think that you should just take the number in your head of whatever you think is going to be big, right? And just multiply it by 4. And then there you go.
I love that.
The biggest problem that I see people with getting started where they don't have traction is they're not doing enough. Like they're like, well, I knocked on 12 doors today. No, dude, you need to knock on like 120. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
think bigger with what you want your result to be, but also think bigger with your actions you're going to take to get there, right?
Way bigger, yeah.
I totally agree. And I think just to kind of bring it back a little bit to how we ended up meeting, being in a mastermind, especially a high level mastermind, your eyes do start opening to what is possible, because you're in a room with people who are doing a lot more than you're doing in some cases, and you go, oh wow, like you can do 100 deals in a year? Like that's a thing? Like when I was starting out in this business in my local market, there was somebody who did 25 deals in a year, and I was like, I said this, like this is almost a quote. Like I think I said to someone once, if I could do half of what they're doing, I would be ecstatic,
Yeah, exactly.
Because 25 was the ceiling as far as I was concerned. There was no more than that you could do, right? And then I start meeting people and surround myself with folks that are doing 50, 60, 100, 200. It's like, what in the world is going on? But then you realize the effort to do, honestly, you guys will do 80 deals this year with probably less effort than you did 40 last year. And then next year in 2020, Who knows? You'll do 100 or 150, and you'll probably put less, like, or the same effort into it. So it's not like I do 40 deals, I work my butt off, I'm busy all day and all night, and then I do 80 deals and I'm like staying up, I'm not even sleeping anymore. It's not like that, because you systemize, you hire people, you bring people in so that you can expand. And it's very possible. And you're right. I thought I was thinking big when I thought if I could just do 12 deals, I'd be all over it. And then, fast forward, if you told me what I'm doing now, like 8 years ago, my mind would explode. And I look at my business now and I go, I really got to grow like this. And I don't mean necessarily grow for the sake of growth, but I need to improve. I can do better, right? My numbers can be bigger and my margins can be better. And, I need to tweak this. Like, I'm not like satisfied. Like, I've done it and now I'm just going to stay right here. Like, you go to a certain distance, you can only see so far, but once you get there, you can see farther, right? And that's kind of what it ends up being. And it's not about not being content. It's just, you see what's possible. Your eyes are opened a little bit more, and it's a little more clear what you can do. So
100%. Yeah, that was the same thing for us. Flashback where you thought you wanted to be, you only dreamed of, right? But then once, like you said, you got exposed to that, you're like, I thought I wanted to be here and this is all I wanted. And then it's just like amazing how that changes so much. Like, always be thankful for where you are, because at one point you always wished you were there.
Yep.
But once you're there, like, it's cool to just see that change and then transition year over year to like think bigger, do more, grow bigger, like remove the limiting beliefs. And like, you are truly capable of anything if you, like Chris said, want it bad enough, you're willing to put in the effort and the time and the commitment, and also those blood, sweat, and tears and sleepless nights that come sometimes. But if you want it bad enough, like, it will happen. You just can't quit.
Yeah.
Totally.
And one last thing that I'll say as far as that goes too is going back, you asked, what would we do differently? We would have joined a mastermind like way sooner. There was nothing like this when we started, but at least to my knowledge, but we would have joined a lot sooner, because one of the ways that you excel in one of the biggest ways is when you get around a lot of people. You think you're 25 deals a year or whatever it is, right? You think you're a stud, right? And even though we're on pace to do what we're doing now, like we'll step in the room and like, you got someone in there doing 300. You guys like doing over 100. I don't even know where you guys are at right now. You guys do crazy. So, so the thing is, it's like you see all these people and it expands your horizons of what's possible. You're like, wow,
totally.
That is possible.
And then it's cool because being in something like that, like, so let's say you're doing whatever 80 deals a year and that guy's doing 200. What's so cool about the mastermind is like, you literally get in the same room, across the table, across the lunch table, and you guys talk about like just those little things that he's like, I went from 80 to 200 by doing X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Like, that's awesome. Or, hey, I used this program, which saved me X number of dollars per piece or per dialer or per whatever. And you're like, oh my God, that saves me thousands of dollars a year. And then you can take those little things that you think don't add up by saving X number of whatever on that piece or that dialer over the course of a year. That's so much more money you can reinvest and hire and grow with. So you learn all those things from being around people that are doing them and made those changes.
Absolutely. Totally. It's funny when you're starting out, you really, everything you learn is kind of like big, it's like, oh, that is a total mind shift, right? And then as you scale, the differences or the distinctions or the things you learn are maybe not as monumental, but because of volume, it exponentially helps you, right? So you don't need to learn like business altering, paradigm shifting things when you're doing 80 deals. But if you learn a couple of tweaks and you times it by 80 deals, the savings is astronomical, or the benefit is astronomical.
Or even if you take, your fees, even if you take your average profit from, whatever to doubling it, right? I mean, that doing the same number of deals, I mean, you could do twice as much profit,
Yeah.
You could simply add an extra $2,500 or $5,000 to every deal times 30
like you
deals.
said on volume.
Like, look how much money that is. So you have to think like it's a compounding effect in everything that we do.
And we're seeing scaling too, kind of like what you said. It's about turning little knobs. It's like little tiny knob, a tweak here, a tweak here, a tweak here, a tweak here. But volume and scale, it's a big.
When you scale, a little improvement over the course of the year is a humongous difference. So
huge.
That's awesome. Listen, guys, I'm going to wrap this up. I know you're busy, and this went a little even longer than I thought it would go, but it was so good. I can't stop you guys from talking because you're great. You're what you're doing is so cool, and you're just cool people. I told you before we got started, you're like Mr. and Mrs. America to me. You're not only good-looking people, you're smart, you're successful, you're good-hearted people, which I think is huge. I gravitate toward people that are just good people, and you guys are good people, and I really appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on and hopefully, and I think inspiring a lot of people like you've been doing. You guys are going to be at Flip Hacking Live with me. I know you're going to do a presentation there, so a whole room of people are going to get a chance to see what you guys are about, and I'm excited to have you there, and I'm super proud of you guys. I knew you before you exploded, and I'm just happy to be your friends and say that I know you. So thanks for doing this, and I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, we were honored to be here. Thanks so much for having us.
All right, guys.
Talking live too, and it was amazing to be on your podcast, and really appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome, thanks, guys, and we'll see you in a few weeks in San Diego.
Sounds good.
See
you
All right, guys. Bye. Thanks. Bye. All right, that was Chris and Heather Logan, and I think it's pretty clear to see why I brought them on. They're just really, really awesome people. They're rock stars. I mean, they corporate people working 60 hours a week, just hustling, figuring this business out, getting out there for 2 years and putting out bandit signs. I mean, my goodness, that's way longer than I would have lasted doing bandit signs. So they're just willing to do whatever it takes, and really, I don't know if you caught this, really understood the power of this during the interview, but they stopped doing direct mail. They stopped doing basically everything except cold calling, and they doubled their business, and they just managed cold calling. And like they said during the interview, they just focused on one channel, one lead generation channel, and they mastered it. And these guys are the best. They're going to be talking at Flip Hacking Live, like we said. We invited them there because there's nobody doing cold calling like these guys. They're just rocking it out, and they're just great people. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you got something out of it. I think it was the kind of interview that really makes you feel like you can do this, and they're good people and they're smart people, but they're just like you and I, and they really are just getting it done and creating a profitable business, and I just love those guys. So I'm glad I could bring that to you, and I hope you enjoyed it. So until next time, until we speak again, guys, if you want to do this business, if you really want to be good at it, if you want to really crush it in real estate, the first thing is just to get out there and just start. All right, we'll see you next time.